then my husband walked out on me. Hello, y'all. I'm Diana Brienne. This story goes way, way, way back. I was in my 20s. I was very, very young. And I had gotten married. I was madly in love. He was madly in love with me. But there were some things he didn't tell me, like he had been married and had 5 children. Well, I got to know that a little bit into the relationship, but by then I was pulled into the relationship. But he had been married, okay? And so we got married. And so what basically happened was things began to fall apart a bit afterward because, well, he still loved his children. And that's understandably so. I love my children with all my heart. And the finances were tied up with his ex-wife because they own businesses together. So I was now a third party in all of this mix. And I was very young. I was very naive, very vulnerable, and madly in love. And we traveled and we went places. And when we got back to Palm Springs, this is, fast forwarding, after quite a while, he asked me to go to the bank and get some money. And this is before credit cards were used all the time, because this goes way back. And so I said, okay, because we were going to go to Northern California. And I said, well, I'm going to stop and visit my friend at the same time and just tell her goodbye before we leave. We weren't permanently leaving. We were temporarily leaving. And so I went to the bank, got a little bit of money, not a lot, but a little bit. And then I went over to my friend's, and she wasn't home. So I got back home early, and there he was pulling out. And I said, wait a minute, where are you going? Where are you going? We're not ready to leave yet. He said, I love you, but I'm leaving you. I said, what? And he pulled out and started driving down the drive. And I started running after his car. And I was running after him. And this all happened in California. I was living in Palm Springs, and we had a beautiful home that I did not technically own because it was in the business. He had it in the business, so to speak. And so but he bought the house for me, and it was a beautiful home. And so I ran after him. He took off, but he started calling me every hour. I was just traumatized, heartbroken, beside myself, had no idea what I was doing, what to do, crying, sobbing. My friends all came over. For whatever reason, it was in July, I threw a turkey in the oven. I like to cook. Cooking is my therapy. And here I have my friends, and I'm cooking a turkey, sobbing, crying over the turkey, as my friends are sitting there trying to console me and comfort me. And so over the period of the next couple of weeks, I was there in this big house by myself. Summertime, very, very hot, around 120 degrees outside. And we had 2 huge new air conditioners. Both went out suddenly. So now I was in the house with like an oven. So I had to open up the windows and doors, but the problem was the house was very private. And so I had to turn off the security system, and I didn't want to do that. So there I was in this big house by myself, and it was either be in an oven or open up the doors. So I opened up the doors, and I was terrified. I couldn't sleep during the night. And so lo and behold, fast forward, he keeps calling me all the time, constantly. Didn't make any sense about it, why he was doing this, because it was just so traumatizing all the time. And he had a friend come over, which I didn't know. I thought she was, coming over for me to console me. And she took me out to lunch. And I was so young, and I was telling her, everything. Well, she wanted to get all the insights to give back to him, which she did. And at another point, I had a wonderful friend whose husband, who before she had ever met him, I dated him. He was a big time, well-known doctor. And I had dated him, and she took me out to lunch. And I dated him before they ever met, okay? And I wasn't in love with him or anything like that, although he was very good looking. And she took me out to lunch, and she said, Diana, you deserve so much more. You're beautiful, you're talented, you're gifted. You are going to be okay, but you're going to be more than okay. You are going to be great. And I'm so traumatized at that moment, sitting there crying, crying and crying. And I was just a mess, sitting downtown Palm Springs at a very nice hotel with my friend who paid for the lunch because at that point, all my bank accounts had been shut down. I had no money now. And so I went back to work in LA at the job I used to work at, which was a fabulous job. Fortunately, they took me back. And it was about a 2-hour drive. And so I was going into work, but something told me to turn around and go back home. So I called in and said, I won't be there today. And I went back home at the house I was no longer living in because when the air conditioner went out, I had gone to Kmart to get me some electric curlers. And when I came back, I then turned the security system off, which only I knew the code to at that point. And somebody had been in the house. And I had brought into the marriage some wonderful pieces from my grandmother and beautiful dishes that she had given me and many wonderful little things that were mine, including these 4 beautiful mirrors. They weren't real expensive, but they were gold embossed and they were big and they were on one of the walls. In that 20, 30 minutes that I had been gone to Kmart, somebody had been in the house. For whatever reason, they took 3 out of the 4 of those mirrors. Makes no sense even today. And the 4th one was cracked down the middle. The phone rings, I pick it up, it's him. And I look over and see the mirrors, 3 of them gone. And I said, I've got to go. I've got to get out of here. And I threw my stuff, whatever I could throw into a bag, and left and went and stayed at my girlfriend's. She let me have her bed for quite a while, and she slept on a couch, and she was an amazing friend. So I had no money, sleeping at my girlfriend's place. I wouldn't go back to my house. So I went into LA, went to go into LA, turned around, and there was a moving van in front of my house, taking everything out. And being so young, I was so scared and so fragile and so traumatized. I ran back over to my girlfriends, and she went there and told them, don't take her stuff. But they did, which I never saw any of it again. So I was so traumatized, but I kept remembering things are going to be great. Things are going to be great. Those words spoken over me meant so much. They're not just going to be okay. They're going to be great. And so I ended up having to rebuild my life. He and I went back together times 10 until I no longer would see him or talk to him. And of course, we were divorced, got divorced at that point. And we went to the Red Lion Hotel in Santa Barbara the last time I saw him. He was heading back the next morning to Northern California. He planned on staying married forever. He said, I love you, I love you, I love you. You're the love of my life, or something like that. I don't know if I was the love of his life, but it seemed like I was. And I looked back at him as he was going north, and I was going back to Palm Springs to my girlfriends. Or no, by then my mom was living back out there, and I was staying with her. And we were all from the holler in West Virginia, Appalachia. And so my mom had just gotten back out there at that point. And so I looked at him and I said, I'm never going to see you again. He didn't hear me say that because I was in my own car. And I looked at him, and that was the last time I saw him because I refused to see him after that. He kept calling me, and then he kept playing games with me, so to speak. And I just had enough. So I rebuilt my life. It took a while. I was traumatized. I had no money. I had to start over. I was young, vulnerable, inexperienced in something like that. I couldn't afford an attorney because they wanted a $10,000 retainer, and all of my bank accounts had been frozen. So I walked out of that marriage essentially with very little to nothing. And that was many years ago. I healed. I overcame the trauma. I remember it, but I overcame it. I wished him well, only good in his life. And he said to me at one point, Diana, you are so young. You have so much living to do that you have not yet experienced. I'm setting you free. And he loved his children and probably his ex-wife, although I think he got married several times after that to different, and I think he had more children. Not sure. But he was really a good man. I know it sounds crazy, but he was really a good man who loved his kids. And perhaps I would have done the same thing. I love my kids. And so it was me or his kids, and he chose the children because the ex-wife really wouldn't let him see the kids at that point because he had married me. And so I overcame that trauma, and I went and I became okay. And then I became great. And had it not been through what I went through, I would have never met my husband, Jack. And as y'all know, we call ourselves Jack and Diane, and everybody knows this is Jack and Diane. So our Jack and Diane would have never existed had it not been for me going through to get to. So sometimes we have to go through to get to. And for me, it was trauma. But like my friend said, be patient with yourself, let yourself heal, let yourself overcome, love yourself through it, surround yourself with wonderful people. And if you have to lay down there on the floor like I did and cry it out, I did. And I went on to have this amazing life as Jack and Diane with my husband and my 3 beautiful children that would have never been here had I not gone through all that. I'm not saying you have to go through trauma to have your blessings. It just happened to be the way that played out. Okay. So if you're going through trauma, always believe that you're going to be more than just okay. You're going to be great. From my house to yours, I hope to talk to you soon again. May God bless you. Bye-bye.